Another edition of Riding Home here on Dog Post. Dean, Legge, Matt DeBary. Matt, it's the middle of the summer. A lot of rain lately, but recruiting at Georgia is certainly heating up. A lot of big recruiting visits this weekend. Let's start there. What can you tell the audience about this weekend in Athens?
This upcoming weekend is going to be a big one. Five-star running back Kendall Milton from the Fresno, California area will be taking his official visit to Georgia this upcoming weekend. Was at LSU last weekend, I believe. Alabama will be the week after that. But, as we've said on Dog Post many times, he is a major target for Georgia. We've said for a long time now that Georgia needs two elite running backs in this 2020 class, and they will get those two some way or another. But Kendall Milton is definitely a guy that Coach McGee, Coach Smart, they have been keeping in touch with him for a long, long time now. They've put in the effort. They made his top five. They're getting their official visit with him this weekend, and they're going to look to close the deal. I think he is a guy who would like to make a decision this summer. So these are very, very big visits, as well as Joshua Braun, Sewanee, Florida offensive tackle who committed to Georgia late Monday night during the NBA Finals. He is also taking his official visit to Georgia this weekend. And he's an interesting prospect. He makes 4 offensive line commitments for Sam Pittman in this 2020 class. And he's another guy with size, 6'6", 335 pounds, will play on the right side of the offensive line, listed as a tackle, but I think he is probably better suited to play right guard. I'm no offensive line guru, but I think he could play that same position as a guy like Ben Cleveland or someone else. He's just massive, excellent run blocker. So either way, his size will put him on the right side of the line. I think he's better suited for guard, but this is a big pickup. Committed to Georgia over Florida and South Carolina. He's a guy that Sam Pittman likes. Obviously, if you're able to commit to Sam Pittman publicly and they allow it, you are a pretty good prospect, especially in Sam Pittman's eyes. So Josh Braun, a massive pickup. Pittman likes that size, and the Georgia Bulldogs just added more beef on the offensive line in the future. So big-time pickup there. I think Dylan is going to go see him, right?
That's the plan. I mean, you're talking about Josh Braun? Yeah. It was curious because, we had our little retreat, if you will, not that long ago with the three of us were talking about plans for the future and who should we really concentrate on seeing. And he was a guy that we worked into our schedule because we thought that there was a pretty good shot. We didn't know for sure, but he's a guy we'll go see in August. Another kid from Florida. I don't know how many. Off the top of my head, I know they've got 2 for sure in this class from Florida. I think they might have more than that. Well, they do if you count Warren Brinson. But and then Jalen Carter as well, who I really like a lot. This is Georgia's got a third of their class from high schools in Florida, and they're starting to spread out more and more. Mikel Sherman is one of their best players, if not one of the best player in this group. Broderick Jones looks really good. Tate Ratledge doesn't look as good as Broderick Jones, but certainly could develop into a lot. And this is a very good slate of kids already. And you can't ever know. I mean, this has been a tough run for Florida. I mean, when you start talking about what you're getting in Braun, a kid that's not that, and a kid who is from what Florida people would call Gator Country, sort of that triangle of Florida that they really want to own. And Georgia gets another kid from there. I mean, I wouldn't call Live Oak Jacksonville, but it's in the world of Jacksonville. It's not so far from Jacksonville. And Florida has really gotten popped by Georgia lately in the state. What do you make of that? I mean, can it continue? What does Georgia maybe have 10 to 12 more kids in this class? Maybe something like that?
I think so. Real quick, you pointed out Ratledge and Jones. I actually like Tate Ratledge more than Broderick Jones right now and would rank him higher. But either way, getting back to your point, those are 2 elite tackle prospects. I love Tate Ratledge. Broderick Jones obviously has the size there.
In this case, I must say, it seems like Broderick Jones is more developed.
I would disagree there. I think he's got the size and the length, but he's a guy I think probably needs a little more development than Tate Ratledge. I think Tate Ratledge is, for a big guy, man, he can bend and he can move, and he just looks more ready to me. Broderick Jones is a lot of potential.
He definitely doesn't look more ready physically, but you know,
they're both
look.
big dudes.
Here's the thing about this discussion is that when you look at Broderick Jones, maybe that he's more slender. I don't know. I mean, how much does Tate Ratledge weigh? I mean, he's over 300.
He's over 300.
Yeah.
He definitely looks the part to me. Tate Ratledge looks like your left tackle, Broderick Jones the right side. Obviously, I wouldn't expect either one of them to come in and play immediately, which is good for Sam Pittman. But I do think those could be your tackles for multiple years if they progress the way that they should. But getting back to your original question, I do think Georgia's going to pick up probably 2 more commitments from the state of Florida, maybe more. Right now, I definitely have my eyes on 2 guys from the Sunshine State, Alontae Taylor and Marcus Rosemy, the wide receiver. Yeah. I do think Georgia's in a good spot for both of those guys. And Leonard Manuel, committed to Florida, put a top 7 or so out there. Still, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. What's the story there? I mean, like, does that kid have grades that people need to worry about? What's the story there that you? I mean, to some degree, we're in a new world here, and we've been in a new world for a while, Matt, where being committed does not preclude you from giving a top 7 or a top 10 or a top 5. Yeah. It's all relative. But what's the story with that kid? Is it grades that people are worried about more than anything?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't feel super comfortable talking about his grades or whatever, because I really don't know the specifics. What I do know is he got a lot of early offers very early in the process, committed to Tennessee as like a rising sophomore, something, backed out of that. He might have been committed to Miami for a hot minute there. Obviously committed to Florida now, but keeping his options open. But every kid's different. A lot of these kids, they commit early, they love the attention, and then they don't get enough attention after that because they're already committed. These 5-stars who wait till signing day, they get their attention either if it's wanted or not the entire way. But a lot of these kids, they miss the spotlight for a little bit. They want to get their name out there. The kid who just decommitted from Florida, Joel Williams, he put on Twitter, he had a whole edit for his decommitment. Like he was pushing it. He said, big news coming, ... like getting people aware that, hey, I'm going to decommit and I've got this sick edit to do it. So people just like the attention, don't want to leave the spotlight, enjoy people writing about them. And then you've got guys like AJ Green and Dominic Blaylock who could not be further from it. And they don't like the attention and whatnot. But every kid's different. I think Leonard Manuel, I don't know the family situation or whatever, but he seems to enjoy the spotlight. But he's a hell of a player, and Georgia did offer him and pursue him early in the process. I don't know what the latest on him is. He sure doesn't seem 100% committed to Florida if he's got a top 7 out there. But nothing surprises me anymore with how this has gone. But when that kid made a sweet edit for his decommitment and then tweeted prior to that, hey, big news coming. They're promoting these decommitments in top 7s now, and it's pretty crazy. I'm not going to write a story on a kid's top 10 or top 12, but others might, and it gets them back in the spotlight. But every kid's different. But Leonard Manuel is a guy who I think Georgia would love to add in this class. He's a tall 6'4" kid who can go up and make plays. And Gervin Dexter, another defensive tackle that Florida has committed, trying to keep an eye out there as well. Obviously, Georgia's looking at all these defensive linemen. It's a priority in this class, and they're going to get the best ones they can. So I definitely think that they're still keeping their options open, even though they have, I think, 4 defensive linemen committed: Warren Brinson, Jalen Carter, Nazir Stackhouse, and Jimo Burrows. So they might have 4 committed, but you still have Jacoby Cowan out there and a Gervin Dexter, who I think they would love to add if they could. So definitely some options open right there.
When you look at just globally recruiting with what's left on the board, the 2 guys that there's really 3 guys that are sort of consensus top 10 players that I'm still tracking for Georgia, obviously. It's Jordan Burch, a kid from Columbia, South Carolina, plays at a small private school in Columbia. It's not even what's called the high school league in South Carolina. So he's playing the private school league there. He's clearly a top 10 player. The consensus right now, if you want to believe that, is that he's the number 1 player in the country. Then you got Zach Evans, a kid from Houston, who is flirting online with Georgia a lot, and Keely Ringo. I think if you were to reverse order of the way I said them, there would be the order by which, well, maybe not, that they would go to Georgia. I mean, I think Ringo, Georgia's in very good position with. Zach Evans, I think it's starting to look more and more like they're in better position than people thought.
Well, I've been saying it for a while on Dolphins. I worked hard on those Houston sources when I realized it was going out of the state so much. It made me work harder, but I've been saying Georgia has a really good shot with Zach Evans. I think like this time last year, I was always told if he leaves the state, Georgia's got a good shot. And I've said that on Talkpost a while. And when he came out with that top 5, we were at the beach, and I told you and Dylan, like, hey, this is big news right here. No Texas, no A&M. If this kid leaves the state and Georgia continues to push like they should, I mean, it shouldn't shock anyone if this kid turns out to be a Bulldog. But LSU, Alabama, probably the 2 teams there. But Zach
what about Burch? What about Burch, though? I mean,
it's weird. I think he's got some family connections to South Carolina, and obviously those family connections are strong. You've had Jadeveon Clowney stay there. The kid out of TL, Hannah, Zach Pickens, had family ties, I believe. He went there. Rick Sandage went there. So we'll see. I know Clemson is always going to keep pushing. They've got about 1 billion defensive linemen committed right now. It's hard to imagine landing.
Did you just say Rick Sandage in the same breath as Jadeveon Clowney?
Not on the talent standpoint, but kind of how their recruitment was, just where they were looking elsewhere. But I think the family feel and the being a South Carolina native was really big for them in the end. Everyone's different.
Yeah, but doesn't everybody sell this family bullshit? I mean, come on.
It works for
well, it works for whoever. It works for you when you go to that school. But I mean, like, so now South Carolina has a family feel too. I mean, like, does Tennessee? Is that what we're going to say to everybody? The kids, I don't know. I mean,
family, not family time. Well, maybe a little bit, but playing time really, I think, was what got Zach Pickens and Rick Sandage to stay home instead of really try to leave the state. I think
Sandage was from North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think he was. I think family members or whatever had some type of South Carolina ties, and when that happens, and you can have the chance to play really early, it makes sense that why they would go there, but. Where were we?
I can't remember. I'm sorry. We're going too far off the beaten path here because I'm just looking up Rick Sanders because sworn his graduating
at the
was
Concord or something.
So that's north of Charlotte for people keeping score at home.
We were talking about Keely Ringo and
you just look at the situation and. Right now Georgia is, a top 5 class. It depends on the day. That can swing back and forth. Clemson is probably going to be the number 1 class running up to close to signing day. And then we're going to see. I mean, Georgia has 5 fewer commits than Clemson, 5 fewer than LSU, 8 fewer than Alabama. Those are the teams in front of Georgia right now. If you run the straight of Burch, Evans, and Ringo, you're jumping a lot of people. And the question is, too, will all of these stay the same? They almost never do. Right. I think South Carolina, just looking at this, South Carolina has actually not had a bad season so far in the recruiting world. So it's interesting. In the SEC, boy, you better be. I mean, top 10 doesn't get it done. You need to be top 5, or you're going to be facing, or you're not going to get out of your division.
Yeah, there's a reason Muschamp hired Brian McClendon. That guy can recruit Thomas Brown as well, so it's not surprising what they're doing. I thought they quietly brought in a nice class last year as well. But yeah, looking at Georgia, they're going to try to finish with 5 stars. Nobody has finished the way Kirby Smart has the last 2 early signing days and then again in February. No one's closed like him, so you have to expect, Georgia's going to close again with some of these 5 stars that are going to wait till signing day, like a Zach Evans.
Zach Evans, Ringo, Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert. I mean, there's a lot of them left out there to sort of attack Kendall Milton. I mean, I think the chance of Georgia signing Kendall Milton and Zach Evans, they have a higher chance of signing those 2 than anyone. I mean,
you've been high on Milton for a while in Georgia after what you heard down in Jacksonville.
Talking with people, yes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's still going to be tough. I
think it's going to be tough too.
I'm
just saying that
if anyone could do it, it's Dale McGee in Georgia. I agree there.
Yeah, and you look at. I mean, Marshawn Lloyd going to Carolina, that's another thing that helps South Carolina. South Carolina's this has not been all bad. for them. I mean, Tate Raj is not as heavy as I thought he was. If he's listed at 311, I don't know if that's what he'll probably play at 330 by the time he gets to Georgia. I mean, he's a big old kid. He's athletic. He did play offensive and defensive line. He should play offensive and defensive line at Darlington, a school that small. But if you just keep talking about all the guys that are still out there, Marcus Roseme at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, these kids, the maneuvering of rankings, that's basically done so that the .coms can get more clicks. That's a lot of what that is. So you have to take it for what it's worth in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's not a lot of new data that came out in the last month that would really change these things. So the bulk of that is marketing. But still, you could see guys creep up into 5-star territory. Someone who's just on the outside of 5-star, like a Marcus Roseme. I almost call him Rosemary because it really feels like it should be Rosemary, but it's Roseme. Guys like that are certainly 5-star candidates. There's just so few 5-stars that are given out anymore. But in the grand scheme of things, you've got your quarterback. You've certainly getting to your offensive line. They need the running backs, man, and they're after essentially the two best ones.
Yeah, and they're going to add 2 tight ends as well. They're in the mix for 3 of the country's best. I don't think Theo Johnson out of Canada. I think Georgia might be 4th right there. I heard today more of a Penn State, Iowa, Michigan battle. But the 2 big ones are Eric Gilbert and Darnell Washington. Georgia's going to try to get both. That's the big prize. It looks like Eric Gilbert is probably the guy who I think Georgia has the best chance with. They'll have to fight off Alabama for Darnell Washington. And then Jalen Conyers, a guy that Todd Harley went to see twice in the evaluation period in Texas. He's down to Georgia, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. So Georgia's going to get 2 really good tight ends. They'd probably like one to jump on board sooner than later, but at the end of the day, they'll get 2 there. So offensively, Georgia is doing everything they can to stack up in this 2020 class. They've got 1 receiver already committed with size, Justin Robinson, 6'4" guy, Roseme, 6'2". We'll see how it plays out there. A.J. Henning, a kid out of the Chicago area.
There's not a lot of spots, man. I mean,
no.
Let's just say 2 guys decommit. You get back down to 10. That really only means you have about 20. I mean, that means you really only have about 12 to 13 kids that you're filling the spots in for. You've got, and they're in play. I don't want to sit and count how many of the top 100 they're in play for, but it's a lot. It's certainly a lot more than 13 in the top 200 kids that Georgia is after. So this is another class that's adding on what they've had, which has been a very good run of kids for the Dogs here for a long time. If I would not at all be surprised I would not be shocked if they pulled in Evans and the kid from California. But we're a long way from both of those things from happening.
The crazy thing that I've seen is in 2017, Kirby got here. The whole plan was lock the state up, lock up the state of Georgia. And they did that 2017. And even in 2018, they did a fantastic job in the state. Last year, 2019, we saw them go out of state. And this class, I think 75%, maybe more, will be out of state guys. Georgia only might sign 4, maybe 5 in-state guys. So in the beginning, when the plan was to lock up the state, they did. Now they're competing for championships year in and year out, and you've got to recruit nationally. And moving forward, it could be 75% of their class, depending on numbers, obviously, could be out-of-state guys. So they are locking up the state when they want to, and they are going to try to get a 5-star running back from California, from Texas, a linebacker from Washington, D.C. They're going wherever they need to get guys, and it shouldn't surprise these Georgia fans anymore when they see, hey, Georgia might land another 5-star from whoever, So they're doing everything they want to pretty much on the recruiting trail right now, and a lot of it's thanks to Sam Pittman, who again is bringing in massive offensive linemen pretty much whenever he wants. So,
all right, we're going to wrap it there. Thanks for joining us on Riding Home here on Dog Post. Go over to dogpost.com, dawgpost.com. We got some stuff about DeAndre Swift. We've got some the usual recruiting day to day, and college football is right around the corner. And we expect to see you over at Dog Post. We'll be continuing putting these up on YouTube, iTunes, and Instagram. Go check out Dog Post today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you over at the site.